We have 60 million out of work. 30 million on the verge of homelessness. 30 million without health care. 1 in 5 Americans who worked in the leisure industry is unemployed today. Long lines at the food banks with a 4-hour wait. So many people have fallen into poverty, barely able to pay monthly expenses. Trillions get wasted every year while our elderly are hungry. We are staring down the barrel at one of the largest mass eviction crises in the history of this country since the Great Depression. Millions of Americans are without jobs and waiting for the politicians in Washington to do theirs. Yet Trump and Pelosi could not agree on a stimulus bill. Trump halted stimulus negotiations only to reverse hours later. Yesterday he declared, "The stimulus negotiations are off." And the stock market went into a free dive right after all the hope of stimulus finally dies off. Back to vaccine hope, I guess, for the next pump and dump. But in an evening tweet storm, Trump folds. And this morning, the stocks are rebounding. Further proof of the drug-induced markets is more focused on bailouts and free money than the reality of the economy. The written is on the wall: the stock market shall not live on bread alone, but on every tweet that comes from the president's phone. President Trump is held hostage by the stock market. The valuations of major indices have been simply too high by historical standards for years. This was due to low interest rates, which moved demand from bonds to stocks. Indeed, America is not a country. It is a business. And a corrupt one with that. This sort of thing opens your eyes a bit. This is another case where we are the product. The red-blue team is in business to sell our representation to the highest bidder. It is the only product they have to sell. And the mainstream media is their propaganda arm. Whenever the red, the blue, and the mainstream media team agree on something, you have to know something is fishy. We are a commodity to be harvested from light bulbs to healthy choice frozen foods to your email account, all products and services. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to click the like button. And as you know, friends, I rely on your donations to keep this channel functional. As you know, it takes a crazy amount of research and time to bring you this content on a daily basis, so I hope you consider helping with whatever donation you can afford. Thank you. Time to stop the craziness and propping of the stock market balloon. No more stimulus. Printing needs to end. No more stimulus to corporations. It is time for real capitalism and not corporate socialism. They could care less about evictions or food challenges or jobs. Forget about all the folks, tens of millions, effectively put out of work, who will never get their jobs back. The people don't get diddly squat. The economy will take several years to heal. The average citizen is exhausted, and the older workers will hurt this go-round terribly. Poverty is bad now, but just wait, the needle will definitely have an ugly uptick. No deal. No deal until after the next Congress and president is sworn in. State and local governments around the country, blue states, red states, are cutting staff because of a dramatic drop in tax revenue and costs related to dealing with the pandemic. All cities and states need some federal aid. We need to save jobs, not give out checks. Do not just pass out another round of $1,200 checks. Use the money to help people pay their rent, but only those people who are genuinely affected by the lockdowns. Another round of standalone $1,200 checks isn't going to stave off anything. Suspending all payroll and corporate taxes will be a tremendous stimulus with incentive for people to go to work. Less costly than the giveaways and way more productive. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that paying people to sit idle is bad for the economy. About time somebody said enough. Airlines just announced a new wave of mass layoffs. But wait until 2021. 2020 is just the warm-up of what's to come for unemployment. The large unemployment numbers coming from October are going to be the polar plunge for the stock market. If people don't have government financial sustenance, there is nothing the Fed can do to prevent the sell-off. The quantitative easing to control interest rates isn't going to matter. The Dow will continue to drop all month now to under 20,000 as everyone begins to realize that even in November, December, and January, there will be no further stimulus or government assistance to help those victims of the pandemic, because Trump will hold a grudge and refuse to sign off on anything if he loses. The market is going to collapse, people, big time. That happened because people, especially politicians and voters, don't appreciate long-term solution. They need rosy short-term results to sleep peacefully. There you are, best stock market achievements with biggest debt, deficits and bubbles, backed by too big to fail US dollar adoption. The racket has been exposed, and most people have a sense that the people running the show are scoundrels or incompetent, mostly both. The fact the markets are completely disconnected from the realities on Main Street America speaks volumes to the levels of greed, manipulation, and power. Tesla, a company that makes a tiny fraction of the cars in the US and loses money, has a market cap that is 4 times larger than the big 3 automakers combined. Apple stock is up 70% in 2020 and nearly 500% since 2015, with a market cap of $2 trillion. The tremendous gains come despite a slight decline in earnings growth since 2015. Jeff Bezos and his now ex-wife are worth $200 billion. CEOs in the United States, on average, make more than 300 times the average wage of workers. Household net worth just hit new all-time highs, but 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings, and 45% have nothing. It now costs the average worker a record of 114 hours of pay to buy 1 share of the S&P 500. Despite high unemployment, a recession, and acute levels of uncertainty about the future, stock markets are new record highs. The Fed, together with the banks, should stay away from the market because the valuation is really bad. How does investing in the stock market casino help the Main Street? All it does is remove cash from productive use. People who are buying inflated stocks are not spending that money elsewhere. And when the house of cards comes crashing down, this entire facade will come down with it. Whether the bubble pops now or later, the mess is unfathomable. The markets are not the economy. Markets represent only the most successful and well-capitalized businesses. These businesses are aggressively gaining market share as small privately owned businesses are acquired or killed. There are very few times in history that show a market equally overvalued to the one we have today. The common theme in equity markets over the past 2 decades is that you have a significant market decline when a recession hits. The declines lasted quite a while during the dot-com and housing bubble implosions but were over very quickly with this recession because this is the first time QE was used at the start of an economic contraction. No matter how aggressive the Fed is, I think we'll either have a steep decline in equities over the span of a few months or the market sits around for many years, hoping the economy catches up to meet its demands. The Fed is the culprit on this one together with the banks. It will take decades before this is ironed out. It is past time to place much of the financial consequences of the pandemic on the Fed Reserve. For 20-plus years, the Fed has maintained interest rates at considerably below market rates, explicitly and tacitly telling all to not save. U.S. personal savings dropped from 10 to 15% in the 1960s to 80s to less than 4% by 2004 to 06. Despite the Fed's zero-rate policy, the pandemic has frightened people to increase their savings rate to a record 33% by April 2020. The Fed not only continues printing money and buying assets, increasing their balance sheet to approximately current $7 trillion, but seem to constantly compliment themselves for the actions the past few decades. Wall Street is thrilled with Fed actions, as are those who own stocks and other assets. Not so good for most of the population. Nor for the intermediate to long-range projection for the U.S. economy. Not good for the young people who will be picking up the tab either. The Fed has pumped the market into joke territory, with even hardened investors shaking their heads at the recklessness and short-sightedness. I only see one way for future generations to deal with the current generations using up the resources and leaving a huge monetary debt. Watch the dollar crashing. I don't want another stimulus check. I don't want any more stimulus anywhere. It is bankrupting the country and future generations to backstop wealthy insiders who made wrong-way bets on debt instruments. I want them to shoulder all of the losses of their reckless gambles. I hope things get better, but I look at all the damage to small businesses around the country, and I don't see how things are going to recover anytime soon, no matter who's in office. Personally, I never believed there was going to be a V-shaped recovery in the first place. You can't just shut down an economy as large as ours, and as fragile as a free market economy is, and expect it to just bounce back as if nothing ever happened. Too much privately owned Federal Reserve Bank interference since 2008 fleecing the public. How does the middle class recover when the game is such a fraud and only favored for the rich 0.01%? We never saw Walmart closed, Amazon, Lowe's, just mom and pop. Things are not going to get better. We will never return to the normal of a year ago. What we are currently experiencing will be normal we will want to return to in a year from now. I wish things would get better, but smart people will be getting ready to weather out the storm that is coming. With layoffs continuing, unemployment still high, many businesses suffering or permanently closing, local and state governments struggling, and millions of unemployed facing foreclosures, evictions, and bankruptcies. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, leave me a comment, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels. I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have donated. Stay safe and healthy, friends.